And welcome everybody to This Week in Prophecy. I am Ed Hubbard, also known as Ed the Pagan, futurist and discusser in my protective underground lair, along with Mary Hawk, witch rising star and advocate for the way things are. We're going to talk today a little bit about prophecy. Everybody doesn't realize it, but prophecy is becoming a big part of our game. Um, What is prophecy? Prophecy is the art of the prediction of the future. There's some more definitions to it and the way people define it, but ultimately it is about telling our future. So, Mary, you grew up. We were talking before we started and we're going to go into a lot of different types of prophecy because I love prophecy. But you grew up with it, right? Especially the type most people think of when they think of prophecy.
I did. I grew up on end times prophecy. I came from a very Christian background, and my parents were very interested in the book of Revelations and what all the prophecies of the Apostle John meant. They studied it extensively, and I heard it growing up all the time, especially all kinds of speculation as to the identities of the Antichrist, the Whore of Babylon, and the beast with three horns.
And there's seven horned beasts, and oh yeah, there are so many parts of the story for what we would call end time Christianity, which is actually a modern phenomenon. Most people don't realize it. The idea of revelations, as we know it, the idea of that sort of thing, including how rapture and things like that, are all more modern tales. They were not originally part of. And everybody's going to say, "What?" Originally a part of our belief. A lot of them are very American in nature. Uh, so, what are we talking about? Well, first of all, let's talk about prophecy in general. Um, and that is the idea that we have these ideas that we know what the future of the world is. And I believe deep down in my soul, and one of the things that separated me from the Christian church um, is the idea that we would all have to die. This is a disposable earth. Remember, the idea of Armageddon and Revelation is about a battle, a video game, as we would call it today, a simulation, a war between entities to make a decision on our souls and have our planet be completely destroyed. Which adds to the idea of disposable Earth. Why do we should we take care? And really, why should we take care of the Earth um, uh, if we're not going to actually play the game? I mean,
And it's interesting you bring that up because that was definitely a mindset in the household I grew up in. Was we don't need to worry about recycling or taking care of the planet because Jesus is coming back within 20 years and it won't matter. And I heard that when I was 8 or 9, and I'm 56, folks. We're still here.
Jesus. The idea of the exit of Jesus from the earth and coming back is a little bit, and it has a lot akin to, and I say it all the time, akin to a man who goes out and says, "I'm going to go get a pack of cigarettes. I'll be right back." Those kids that are left at home are always spending time wondering why do they abandon us. So this sense of abandonment is a very important part of the Christian revelation system. And we're going to talk about other prophecy, but we have gotten into a mindset that only things that are sourced, it's called originism, that where we try to find the origins of things and we try to eliminate it except for the way we see our culture. And we just saw this happen today in the last 24 hours in Paris. Hmm? Paris, people don't know, is being there's a battle in the streets right now amongst the trains. They were causing arson. Interpol has made a number of arrests, almost 200 arrests across Europe over this. People don't realize it, but the Olympics is under attack, and it's in the police and the Interpol and all of these forces have been doing a really good job keeping it calm down. And people go, "Oh, I haven't heard about it." Of course, you haven't heard about it, but you haven't heard. But look it up. Trains, mistrack things. And one of the attacks on it today was the opening ceremony, which I hate to say it wasn't very good. I don't care what they say. It wasn't great. But it had a lot of imagery from the Bacchanalias or the Dionysian or the drunken celebrations of the Greek gods. Realizing Olympics has nothing to do with Christianity, but it has everything to do with the human endeavor. We've had them for a very long time, and we got them restarted in modern times, and they are a celebration of our joy, our energy, our nationalism in a way that's safe and sound. And today, we saw an imagery from ancient, Greek times. I mean, they said, "When did the Olympics become so awake and gay?" It says, "Welcome to the ancient Greeks." So they worked out this idea of the Greeks, and what do they offer? Uh, in my opinion, a mediocre show, but it was based on paintings of the old Bacchanalias, the celebrations of energy, joy, and life. And that they want to make sure that they called it Last Supper. And the Paris community says, "We are so sorry we offended you." This is part of what prophecy does. One of the things that people don't want to know, the weaponization of culture, is that you need to limit your inputs so that all your outputs match. So the world saw, and the Europeans saw, and a kind of Dionysian show that said, "This is a great celebration." We had Snoop Dogg carrying down the super joint of the Olympic torch. We've had all of these bright energies. They had a man in an exosuit that was paralyzed from the waist down, being able to walk with it.
That
So,
was awesome.
so isn't that so? This is the Olympics are the pride and joy of it. Now, one of the celebrants got mad because they brought up the 1972 Munich Olympics, which had a very big incident between Palestinians and Israelis, and it was, became a very tragic thing. And we're not allowed to mention that. So prophecy comes down to this idea. So let's talk about the biggest prophecy of the week, Revelation 3:13, about the fact that the Antichrist would get nicked in the ear, get a headshot, and that he would continue to be able to survive it. And the second thing is the idea that if you get blood on your right ear, and that was one of the ways priests and one of the ceremonial things, that you're anointed and appointed. So in that case, Revelation 3:13 is being used. He hath here, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. So basically, the idea of it was that Trump is now a more divine entity because of the fact that he was shot in the ear. He was shot in the head and he survived it. And not to make light of it, but there was a person right behind him died, probably from the same bullet, it looks like, and that two other people were injured. So, and there's no evidence of a wide scale conspiracy, though they try to talk about it, of doing it. It does look like this was another lone wolf opportunity moment. But that's not what we're talking about. But instead of taking it as that it was a lone wolf, an entity, that we have these sort of battles that we should be talking down the weapons, they immediately started revving this up into Revelation 3:13 and other forms of revelation, talking about the blood of the ear. So we're facing that sort of conflict. Now, the biggest probably one that gets me is that from Nostradamus was the secret sign of knowing, and he called us the eagle rulers. And in the Nostradamus prophecies is that, and that we would face this. There's a lot of prophecy right now that this is our last president of the United States. That we're facing the last president, and in order to live that life, guess what Trump did today? Did you not
What
hear
did
it?
he do?
He said, Christians, just vote this time. We won't need to vote again. We'll get it fixed. That was a
Yes,
very
I
that
did
was
see that.
and that means they're planning to hand the electoral. Very old electoral college in the United States was very simple. You didn't have all this communication, so you elected somebody to help vote for president. It's called the electoral college, so that people could go across country. can get there and place their votes. And if things were to change, as they did from time to time, you could change that vote out with the Electoral College. And it was a great way for a low communication country compared to us now. I mean, we didn't have telegraphs. We didn't even have the telegraph system. I mean, people have said, why did the founding fathers telegraph each other? Have you ever watched a movie from like, the 1960s? I tell this to people all the time. And you go like this, well, why don't you just use your cell phone?
They didn't have them.
Right. And he said, why didn't they use their telephones? Well, the wires were cut. What? And so we tend to impose our reality backward. It's very hard for us to understand what it was like before. And that's where the joke of the old timers come in. So Mary, so where do you remember the telephone starting for you? The first time you played with the telephone?
Well, now, we always had a telephone.
Mm-hmm.
So I can remember picking up the phone and a voice saying, operator, and I said, hi. And the operator told me to go get my mommy, so I did.
And there you go. Now we have these supercomputers in our pockets. Part of the predictions that have been made. And these
But I will build on that. When we
Mhm.
renovated our previous home and found
Mhm.
an old phone jack, my grandchildren did not know what it was.
Right. Isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get back into some prophecies. One of the biggest prophecies come up is that we're heading into World War III. This is very much Nostradamus, Edgar Casey, a vast majority of prophecies. And we're going to start covering them because they're very important. Believe that we're heading into, want us to head into World War III. And now the truth is that most of them have been, by our culture, have been actually outdated. What do I mean by that? It means that we really believe that they were going to happen in the year 2000. We had the Y2K, which was one of the greatest computer sales time. Y2K, as a prophecy of crisis, did a lot of good for us because we rebuilt our computer systems fast, quick, government subsidies, everything. The last of Bill Clinton. I think without the Y2K crisis idea, that we would have had a much different computer system. It would have taken longer for us to get here. But it didn't. And what happened to on the night of Y2K? I actually, some things did have. Two things happened on it. We lost a bunch of sensors. We did lose part of the national grid protecting us from nuclear weapons. So if the Russians did want to launch their nuclear weapons, they did have a minute where we would not have detected them. And we also had a series of knockdowns of traffic lights in parts of California, New Mexico, because the company didn't get it all right. So all these shut down a bunch of traffic lights. That was it. The lady love of my life at the time, a lady by the name of Joy, top-notch computer programmer. She was there. They literally canceled her holiday, put her up in a hotel, and not just her. Like the entire downtown Chicago was full of hotels filled with people who were supposed to be there just in case Y2K happened. And instead, we watched a beautiful fireworks show. This is one of the most amazing fireworks show I've ever seen in my life. Was the Y2K in Chicago, where they had 3 different spots located. So much explosives going into the air. Prince said, we're going to party like it's 1999. We did, the end of 1999. And what happened the next day? Well, went to work. Well,
Yep.
holiday. But we went back to work and the computers didn't stop and we continued on. So, why are prophecy important? And so Mary and I have talked about this because I do. Most people don't know it. I'm fairly prophetic. I believe in prophecy. I believe in prophecy, and it's in the nature of it being weaponized. Um, you're now seeing the idea of it being weaponized, meaning if you do certain. So the biggest thing about prophecy, and it's used against women a lot, is if you do certain things, you're going to get anger from God, which is then going to punish the country. Biggest control rule. Why shouldn't we allow abortions? God will punish us. Really?
Yes, God is going to punish us all if we let anyone get an abortion for any reason.
Thou shalt not, yeah. And they then go back to the various scriptures and prophecies of doing so. And that's one of the things. So we have to understand prophecy is weaponization. One of the biggest prophecies, of course, let's go ahead and talk about the last big prophecy of Christianity. And there's a dozen things, and I'll talk more about this next week as we watch it, if you know of any prophecy happening. And it is the idea of, and this is an awful one. People are going to get very offended when I say it, but it's the Whore of Babylon. And they're going to try to make Kamala Harris, which is whose sacred name is Kamala Diva, which means the great dream of the lotus. Blessed name, beautiful name. It's supposed to be about peace and lotus, and her parents wanted great deal for her. Is that she represents the multinational, multi-headed woman who will then lead all of mankind into ruin. Of course, this was also blamed on Hillary Clinton. Margaret Thatcher got this blamed. Merkel. Almost any Western woman leader gets labeled this. That's an awful one. And the idea of it is that they don't come in as a person who does love. They come in a person that's going to bring lust and the downgrade of men. Because after all, if a woman doesn't dress well, doesn't dress protectively, she wears a tank top, she wears shorts that are too short, it isn't the boys who get punished. It isn't.
Exactly.
They
It's the
don't.
girl.
Girls. And in this case, this is a biblical version of it. If you are trying to ask for power and you're a woman, then you're a whore, a bitch, but the whore of Babylon. You're a taker down of power because only men are having power. So understand, a lot of the prophecies that are about to come up, and you're going to hear about it a lot, is about the whore of Babylon and how she's going to come up rising out of the ocean. And hi, Renee. So Renee's saying hi. So if you want to put up anything into the thing, you want to ask any questions about it, we can do so. So Nostradamus, to me, the one that I think is most interesting is Watch Paris. If we get through this week of the Olympics for the next 2 weeks without anything, it'll still be seen by many Christians as demonic. You're going to see they've invoked gods. They always invoke gods. They invoked the Greek gods and they invoked the French gods. Lady Sionda, the pale, which they call the pale horse darkly. So you're going to see these people take prophecies and make them into their own personal game. So people don't realize. So what is the idea of Christian prophecy? Is that God took us from a garden where He gave us the fruit of the fruit of knowledge that the serpent supposedly gave to us. Now remember, the God is omniscient, so He knew all this was going to happen. If He knows all of this is going to happen, that sort of thing, and move on to giving it. They took the fruit, and then were ejected from the Garden of Eden, where the angel stands with a flaming sword. And where does Revelation end us? I've talked to people. It's a 1,500 mile by 1,500 mile, approximately, city after the destruction of the entire planet. Genocide on a planetary scale. The only known place we now know life exists in the universe, and we've been looking, and that God wants it to end here on this planet.
Yes.
Whereas you see some more of different prophecies, such as the Chardin, saying that we are growing towards ever increasing divination, we're growing in our intelligence, and that we're going to combine into this noon sphere out there, out in the world, and that we're going to have a certain relationship with God on this planet as a life form. That's another prediction. One of the biggest predictions out there that is not Christian is called the singularity. And that is the idea that all of our AI, all of our intelligence is coming to a point where we're going to communicate so quickly, so fast, and we're going to have to be able to build a world that is so interesting that it's beyond understanding. And we've faced this before, called language. There was a time before language, and no human being alive today can really perceive what consciousness is like without language. But yet there was a period of that time where as we were developing our consciousness, both in our physical bodies, our physical incarnations, which continue on, we're the same incarnations of beings that are billions of years old, to where we go next. We've added language, and it's very hard to think otherwise. So, Mary, do you have a particularly favorite prophecy or revelation? You think?
Ah, I truly got soured on
Sure,
the book of Revelation growing up. Um,
but do you not? So people want to ask me. So what are prophecy? Prophecy is the art of telling a story, and it shows patterns. Nostradamus shows patterns. Prophecies show patterns. Mary Shipton, Mother Shipton shows patterns, and some of them
patterns.
that have sometimes are really detailed. And then what happens is that they talk about the negative side because we're negative beings, amygdala,
Right.
and that they are able to tell you about that future. They're able to do it, and then what happens is people come along and add it to themselves. They add it and show it to themselves or try to predict it in a way that weaponizes it. So prophecy are these predictions of patterns and logic that we use then to victimize ourselves with. A prophet told a society where they were these voices of what's happening, say warning them. Cassandra is probably one of the most famous ones. She warned everybody that God's told her and cursed her, and she watched it from the boat, as we know, as Pompeii
Yes.
exploded. She could have saved a lot of people if people would have listened to her. And everybody said, "Oh, that couldn't have happened. We would have known a volcano would be blowing up in our faces." And yet we have Cassandras today talking about climate change, hottest year, and everybody's going, "Oh." We have a president, candidate that says, "I'm going to bring a dictatorship to the United States. Just watch me," and people are voting for him.
Yeah, people don't believe it's going to happen, even though he's told us who he is.
And they don't. And I grew up with a long time the National Council for uh, for Policy, which is the 1981 organization that basically gave birth to heritage and all of this, and are bringing us to the idea of a theocracy. So prophecy is used to create a situation where despair and darkness and energy is there, so that you can do so. Now, divination TV is a great example. We constantly are dealing in the world of divination. What's the difference between prophecy and divination? It's a very thin line. Divination tends to be about telling the future for individuals, whereas prophecy tends to be macro. And we've always lived with prophecies. You can find prophecies written way back. There are ancient prophecies, modern prophecies, Hopi prophecies. We're going to talk about Nostradamus prophecy. But the one prophecy I think we're seeing it in the movies, Dune. One prophecy that was in there, the one track that I have followed and really absorbed, is the idea of the Golden Path prophet. The biggest problem with prophecy is that it tends to see the end of the world, and we get around it. We move past it. And so we don't see it. But a golden path prophet, some people who like, and I believe myself to be one, tries to seek out the future. Tries to seek out the future and to survive these things, not just to know that they're going to come, but to survive them. And that's the essence of the show. And so Mary, you have, I think, Nashville, center of the country, is about the prophecy is heading towards a very big. I think you've had neo Nazis marching the streets pretty openly
Oh,
now.
Lord. Yes. Yes. We have had Nazis infesting our city all summer.
Yeah, and then you have Greg Locke, the crazy,
Yes.
crazy pastor who thinks the world is possessed.
Yes. He thinks the world is possessed. He has children come to his church to have demons cast out on Halloween rather than going and collecting their share of candy. And we have all kinds of crazy things here.
And Nashville is actually home to also Al Gore with the climate change people. There's a lot of prophetic
Yes,
people. And so you're seeing a lot of conflict in Nashville. And I think that's one of the places I think you're going to see prophecies and things of that nature
we are
occur.
also home to a temple of Athena.
That's right. So we're seeing that sort of breakdown. So, folks, we're going to talk more about prophecies as we go along. But this week's prophecy, and let me go explain to you very quickly, is that when Trump got hit in the ear, it is seen as both an anointing and a survival of his inevitability to be elected president, even though every president who's ever ran has believed God's behind him. But also at the same time, this creates a fever. And we've now learned, and the Russians taught it to us, that anyone who can give you a message long enough, 2, 3, 4 months, means you won't believe it otherwise. If I told you Revelations is just a book uh, akin to a science fiction book of the fourth century, taken by Saint John, not the disciple, but if that may have taken a huge dose of mushroom psychedelics, and the world rolled away, and he saw all these different visions of how the world could be. But we got locked into it. So prophecy's biggest danger is you can get locked into it. So think about what you're doing, think about how it is. And it's every day we look to we gamble on the biggest single divination device in our country. And the second one is one we also pray upon. Do you know what they are? The second one is Weather Bureau. Every day we
Yeah,
ask our soothsayers, same as ancient days,
yes.
right? We've not changed it anyway. The tools have, but we predict the weather. Without it, we would be stumbled. Is the number one thing. But the number one indicator of predictions that has really less meaning than it does, stock market. Where it's going. Is it going up? Is it going down? And people pay millions and billions of dollars to try to figure that out. So prophecy really is relevant to you today. So there you go. Anything else, Mary, that you want to have on this first initial cause?
No, I think we've covered it.
All right, folks. Send it in. It is PeggyWorldTV at gmail.com. If you want to bring it in, send me a DM, send Mary a DM. We're going to talk about more about this because now, with the election, literally 100 days from today in the United States, plus all the other elections around the world, this was a big year for elections. And the way that we're seeing it, there will be this sort of outcry. So remember, the last thing is a former president of the United States has said, if I'm not elected as president of the United States, World War III will happen. Now, come on, folks. That's a prophecy given to the prime minister of Israel. So do you think that we want that to happen? Do you want your are you ready for your world to end? There it is. That's your choice for the night. Do you want to see a world that lasts past your death? Or do you want to see a world that ends before you completely have gone from this earth? We're going to try to help you disarm a little bit of this toxic, cosmic, psychological psyops, hundreds of years old, called prophecy. Well, Mary, I guess we say blessed be to everybody from Land of Athena.
Blessed be